Thank you for taking time to become a more effective board leadership team by participating in this leadership series. This module will focus on the importance of board culture. I'm Sue Givens, State Field Specialist for the Kansas Association of School Boards. Quite simply, culture is defined as the way we do things around here. It includes not only our procedural norms, but our behaviors. In short, what people perceive as the nature of our business is in truth a reflection of our culture. And much like an iceberg, people can see our behavior, but our behavior, which is a reflection of our culture, is based upon what people can't see, often below the surface. Our values, our attitudes, concepts of time, how we define ourselves, and even our identity. Our culture is reflected in what others see. Tangibles such as the way we behave, our processes, and our policies. It's reflected in what we say, our values and aspirations. Often we articulate those through strategic plans and verbal goals. And finally, it's reflected in what we believe, the underlying assumptions that are intangible and often reflect our traditions and sometimes our bias. Take a minute to think about this quote. What does Drucker mean when he says that culture eats strategy for breakfast? A good way to consider the quote is to think again about culture as the way we do things around here. And strategy? Well, strategy is the way we say we do things. And if our strategy doesn't align with our culture, it won't matter which program we buy, how much training we take, or how hard we work. Culture will rule the day. Like an iceberg, it's influenced by those things below the surface that can keep a negative or a stagnant culture firmly anchored. But when board leadership teams have common goals, know their roles and adhere to them, focus on improvement, are willing to compromise, listen to learn, and respect and value the other members, their culture, what they do, aligns with their strategies, what they say they do. This slide shows how specific board actions can support an effective culture. In the left-hand column, the communication column, are some specific protocols for the president to adhere to in order to enforce a positive culture. The president needs to remember that they preside over and present items at the board meeting, or they acknowledge those who've been delegated to present. The president also must acknowledge all motions and discussions. The president needs to make sure that all votes are recorded by voice or show of hands or some other physical means. And the president is responsible to keep the meeting moving, presiding over debates, and that could include tabling an issue for further discussion or information in order to move the meeting along. In the second column, we see some legal considerations that are important. In their compliance, they also enforce the culture of the board. Some noted here are making certain that executive sessions are used only for those reasons defined by law, and that executive privilege, confidentiality, is not abused. Remembering that 4 board votes are required for any action, and that includes when you only have 4 members present. 4 is the magic number for school boards because it represents a simple majority of all members, not just those in attendance. When you abstain on a vote, it will count as a no vote. And a reminder that board members have a responsibility to excuse themselves from discussion and action on items where they have a substantial interest. Sometimes you'll see this when personal business is involved in a project that's subject to board action. But remember, only the member who has the potential conflict can make that determination. It cannot be made by anyone else. And last, in the legal column, the president is able to fully participate as a member of the board. They make motions, they can vote on all items with equal weight to the other members. The third column, leadership, is a definite support of a positive culture. Your structure dictates the routine of your board meetings and your agenda, and they're a reflection of organization. It's actually an example of how you do things around here. Board members also need to make a concerted effort to remember that their role is to determine the what of the district. What are the vision and goals? What is the policy? What are the directives to the superintendent? Then it takes even more effort on the part of board members to remember that the how in achieving those goals, directives, and policies are up to the superintendent and their staff. Understanding and adhering to roles is part of a positive and effective board culture. A focus on continuous improvement keeps the subculture from becoming stagnant or from overriding goals of the board. And it's a critical part of a culture of collaboration and trust that issues are resolved at the lowest level. Sometimes this is referred to as a chain of command. We recommend that lines of communication are formal and that all board members, staff, and patrons have access to them. This type of document serves three major purposes. It ensures that those who are closest to and with the greatest knowledge of situations are allowed to resolve them. It requires your staff to be accountable for their areas of responsibility. And finally, it prevents them from being made irrelevant for their areas of responsibility. And please note, even if your district has fewer levels and less specialized staff than this example shows, nowhere on this chart is the board the first level. That's because the board determines the what, not the how, of day-to-day operations. Individual actions of board members impact the entire board culture. Take a few minutes to pause this recording and review these statements about board members' individual attitudes. Discuss the importance of each and reflect on why they impact board culture. Your discussion was likely personalized to your board experience. Each of the attitudes on the previous slide can be summarized as shown here. Board members who are focused on the achievement of all students, who are advocates for public education, who respect differences, have good behavior and manners, maintain confidentiality, do their homework, understand and adhere to their roles, know that their authority is as a board, as a body, not as an individual board member, and who work hard at effective governance, make a difference in building a positive, productive culture for the board and as an example for the district. Often, being an effective board can be attributed to members' willingness to ask questions. We refer to this as a culture of inquiry. Asking questions to develop collective wisdom results in better, more informed decision-making by the board. When everyone has the same amount and depth of information, it does become easier to own the decisions of the board. And it prevents boards from falling into the trap of groupthink or listening only to the loudest voices. 4 other components of a healthy board culture are maintaining a partnership between the board and the superintendent. You are a team. Having trust and candor with fellow board members. Participating in thoughtful and productive resolution of agreements, and being willing to address poor board behavior when it happens that could negatively impact the board. As you reflect on your current board culture, pause the video and list 2 or 3 strengths of your current board culture. And now we want you to do the same thing. Pause and take some time, reflect on areas that your board could focus for improvement of your culture. Perhaps these are areas that are strong already, but are threatened by specific issues or challenges. Or perhaps they're weak areas related to actions that have been discussed earlier in this module. Regardless, please take a few moments and reflect on ways that your culture could improve. Culture is built by our simplest of actions, but your culture defines how you will be known. It is your district's brand. Thank you.